Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and a while ago Oknife, which is the cutlery and tool division of Olight, upgraded their Fortitude knife, which is this one, with the Fortitude 2. Now the Fortitude 2 actually is in collaboration, or at least a branding and marketing agreement with Sootch00, who is a YouTuber who's got a significant following and does an awful lot of stuff, outdoor gear, firearms primarily, survival stuff, prepping, etc. But anyway, this is the Sootch00 edition. Now, it is an upgrade, I believe, compared to the previous Fortitude. The previous Fortitude I really liked. It's a substantial knife. It is a thick D2 steel blade, Cerakoted, heavy, solid G10 scales. Just a remarkable knife. However, it's heavy. This one, they changed the steel. It is now S35VN, which is an upgrade with a thinner blade, especially. Now, this is a D2 is a tool steel, and a tool steel basically is a steel that is designed more for sharpness and hardness over corrosion resistance. It's basically repurposed from the tool industry. If you think of wood shaping and modifying tools, larger tools, drills and saws and planers, etc. But the S35VN would be a powder super steel that was primarily designed for use in the knife industry. So the 35 VN has excellent corrosion resistance as well. In the tool steel world, that's not a primary concern. One of the other things is they went to a Micarta scale here instead of the G10 scales, but they did leave these bright yellow kind of, I guess, Sootch00 inspired G10 accents. They also moved the lanyard from the center and the back to one of the edges. They've rounded things off a little bit. They did keep a good solid index point here in the handle. It's full tang. A lot of people like to have full tang knives. In fact, this is not the general idea of a full tang. This is scales attached to the tang of the knife. You might think of it more in terms of, this might be the closest. Does this actually go all the way through? Let's say you didn't have that sharp point on the end. A lot of knives, and you can see it in kitchen cutlery often, they might have partial tangs, half tangs, three-quarter tangs. It was a way of kind of saving money, making it a little bit lighter in the, kind of the kitchen arena. But it also really substantially, as a matter of fact, reduced the strength of the knife. So this is the way a lot of folks are going. They're running a full handle of the same blade steel, and then they're just screwing on scales. That's why we call them scales, as they aren't, it's not a handle. This is a handle. It has been inserted onto the tang of the knife, and then, attached. Same here. But again, these would be scales. And a lot of times when we're talking pocket knives, you're talking about the actual frame or liner, and then the scales are bolted onto that. As far as the use of this to me is what I really think about with a bushcraft knife. It is not overly aggressive. It's got a fairly good drop point. There's not a huge amount of drop. It kind of reminded me a lot in some ways of the Siebert Benchmade Bushcrafter, and I really like this knife. A lot of people didn't for bushcraft. Who did like it, the SEALs and or the explosive ordnance disposal units. There was something about it, so much so they actually came out with a sand or tan colored handle for use in that environment. Now, it does have a coated blade, and it also does not have really sharp edges. Now, a lot of people are talking about, can you do a fire steel with it? You know what? You can do a fire steel with this end. Is it the best for your edge? No, but these kinds of quality steels really do hold up. And in fact, this one, I have done fire steel with this edge a lot, and I don't see any marks there. Now, if you're really hammering on it, or you got a horrible fire steel that's got too high a hardness or something, you might run into trouble. But what I usually do if I'm curious about that is I rub it on my fingernail and see how much you know, is coming off. I'll do it on my thumb. I can get a little bit. So this tells me maybe with a bit of work, I could get this to scratch a fire steel. If you look at this one actually did it a little bit more. Rubbing it there. You go up to one that's more of a survival oriented one like this, and you can really look at that, just how much that actually removes. Here's the Gerber. Gerber's got a really strong edge, so I can, you know, rub that pretty well. The Oknife F1, it's like kind of almost having another knife right there. Oops, I guess you can't see it, but anyway, it just scrapes stuff off pretty fast. Same with my hunting knife there. The SOG here, the SOG pillar, it's probably got the sharpest. You got to be kind of careful on these edges here. You can even see there's a bit of a bevel, but I'll just do it here. Look at that. I mean, I could make my fingernail a feather stick with this thing. So if you really want, you know, to do that, there you go. But it's a little too aggressive, too sharp a point for what I would consider a bushcraft knife. Now, a bushcraft knife generally has about a palm-sized handle here. If you take a look at the overall length of this, what we're working with, line this up so you can see it, is about, well, 8 5/8 inches. It's kind of nice on the snap-on tape. They give you the fraction so you don't have to actually learn anything. With a blade length, if you look at the actual sharpened edge, we're looking about 4 1/4 inches. That's fine. Some people like them a little shorter, around 3. This is really one of my favorites, and it's actually a little longer, a little thicker. This is S30V steel on this, and it is a little different design than a lot of knives. This was actually one of my very first knives. I gave it away, and I was able to actually get it back. Easy to do a trade with a more modern knife, but this is a Schrade Woodsman, Schrade Old Timer Woodsman. I love this thing. This is the sheath that it came in. You can see it's still there. I haven't cut through this, but I just did everything as a kid with this knife. Kept it nice and sharp, but you can see it's staining. This is a high carbon steel, USA made. You know, I used to polish up this brass on here, whatever that is. But you can see it's held up really well. Nice finger choil there. The Fortitude 2 does come now with a leather sheath. That's this sheath here. Very well made, very smooth leather. You know, sometimes the American leather has a lot of marks on it. Some of the foreign leathers where they don't use barbed wire fences as much. They have a cleaner leather. But anyway, it fits in beautifully, nice and tight into this, but not too tight. You know, that you have to struggle with it. Has a dual direction belt clip. Apparently Sootch wanted something that wanted leather, but also wanted something that you could put in a gun belt, so it's a little bit big here. If you're running it on a regular belt, there might be a little bit of play if you're trying to carry it sideways there. Now, some people have said you know, you see how that slices into, if I pull that out, that is really common in leather sheaths. And maybe people, you know, I've seen some complaints where people were saying you're going to cut your leather sheath. Well, yeah, that's kind of what happens. Same here. I mean, I've sliced this thing up, you know, over time. If you really want out of that, well, you get a sheath that has something like this on it, which if I pull that, I can actually snap it to the side, and now I can deploy the knife and stow the knife over and over again with little threat of hitting this, and then I can just pop it free and snap it down. So there's that. But even some of the larger knives, like this modern Bowie, it's very easy to slice through these things. So you just want to be a little bit careful. Now that one's a little bit bigger. You can see. A lot of people like to chop firewood, so maybe that's the one you use. I'm not a big fan of batoning wood, shaping wood, working with wood. That's what I think of with the bushcraft, not batoning it. I have axes and hatchets for that. But as far as, you know, hanging on to this, I love the feel of Micarta. This knife, this Fortitude 2, is significantly lighter than the original Fortitude. This is, well, here, I'll show you. Grab my, if I can find it. I have a scale here somewhere. there it is that I was going to use. I have to have a little bit smaller one for my limited access here, but also I'll turn this guy on and you can see just how this compares across the line. So let's see, you can see it right there. We've got, let me zero it. Come on, that's in grams. I want to go into, well, I can do it with grams. Oh, you know what it is? Got my big old Olsa magnet here. There we go. It pulls down on these. Kind of an interesting thing. So I've got it ounces here. You can see that right there. So here is the Fortitude 2. We've got 5 ounces, pretty much on the nose. Here is the Fortitude, the original, 7.18. So it's more than 2 ounces heavier. Here's the Falcon even. 6 ounces here, so it's kind of in between. If we go up to one of my favorites, this is G10, 774. This is a much heavier knife, and it's noticeably heavier. And then for your Gerber fans out here, this is the Strong Arm, and this one is, again, in the 7s. So you can see this is not only significantly lighter than the original Fortitude, but it is also lighter compared to most of these other similar ones. Now, if we get into the bushcraft idea, modifying or shaping or cutting or woodworking is really one of the big tasks of bushcraft. So the finger groove or the finger index point here, I think, is important. The thumb ramp, I believe, is important, for getting up or at least knowing where you are. And then a nice, back that isn't too sharp because you're going to be pushing on it. You're going to be working the blade into the wood depending on what you're making here. A trap, a tent, stake, just bushcraft stuff. But if you want to, start chopping through, could you? I think this would hold up if you were nice, if you were respectful that you are trying to chop wood with a knife. But overall, I leave that duty to other things. Could you? It's just like sharpening or starting a fire using the blade and a fire steel. Please don't die in the wilderness because you didn't want to dull your blade on a fire steel. By the way, when you do have something this sharp on a fire steel, you can do things you cannot do easily with the spine if you don't have something that sharp. So the precision, in fact, you can often bury the tip and then pull the fire steel away and actually get the sparks exactly where you want them. But overall, an excellent, outstanding knife. It is a little bit more in price than the original Fortitude, but then it does have a higher quality, higher or more expensive blade, and Micarta can be more expensive than G10 simply because of the manufacturing process. And if you are into something that's got a much softer, much cooler feel, or not cooler, thermally neutral feel. This, where I am right now, it's pretty chilly, and I can feel this in my bare hand being colder than this, but they are exactly the same temperature. That's one of the reasons that Falcon even uses thermal run, up being, in Sweden, north, you want something that doesn't radiate that heat or conduct that heat directly into your hand quite as much as some of the others. And as far as durability goes, Micarta is outstanding. But if I had to say, one knife for the rest of humanity, the G10 might hold up a little bit longer, but still way better than this stuff we were using years ago. That plastic. Anyway, so there it is, the brand new Fortitude 2 Sootch00 edition. So if you want a good bushcraft knife, that's an option. And with that, Doc out.